Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I am getting to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What do they do to get started and what are they doing to stay there? And today I have a very, very special guest. His name's Harry Wilson. He's the co-founder and CEO of Limitless Minds, and he's also a podcaster. And I'm so excited to have him on the show. Hey, Harry, how you doing, man?
Hey, Bruce, it's great to be here. Just excited to be here in the leadership lane, man. This is great. I love it.
I love it. I always like to start the show as I reflect about my guests and where I, met them in my path or learned about them. And for you, we just recently met in Chicago at the Worldwide ERC Global Workforce Symposium. And you were talking about mindset. You were talking about bringing a competitive thinking into the corporate world. And I said, I've got to have you on my show. So super excited about today, man.
I love it, man. Thanks for the opportunity, dude. When I was in Chicago, I used to live in Chicago for like 8 years.
All right.
And so I consider it my city, so anytime I fly in Chicago, I get like a little tear in my eye, and I think I just missed my 20s. I think that's what that's about. But so it was cool to be in Chicago. It was an honor to be on the panel that I was on, and I was appreciative of our time together after the panel. So thanks for having us on, and thanks for thinking enough of me to have you to join your awesome podcast.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about that panel. We're going to talk about some of the things we talked about. But before we do that, I want to learn a little bit more about your organization, Limitless Minds. And I would love for you to just share, just for those who are listening, what is your organization all about, and who are the customers that you serve?
Yeah. So we are a mindset and wellness technology company. We started this business about 3 years ago. And with initially the idea of just taking what has worked in sports and bringing it to the corporate athlete, right? And what I mean by that is one of our co-founders is my younger brother, Russell Wilson, who is the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks. For any of your listeners who watch any football, you'll know who Russell is. But he had an advantage, I felt like, compared to what I had as I was working. I got into pharmaceutical and medical device sales. I was spending time as an individual contributor selling, and then moved through organizations where we're leading people. And I just thought, man, like there's a difference in what my brother has access to that we don't quite have access to at the wonderful companies I was working at. And what I mean by that is Russ had a mindset coach, and he also maybe otherwise known as a mental conditioning coach. Some might liken them to like a sports psychologist. Trevor Moawad was Russell's mindset coach, and Trev wouldn't really necessarily call himself a sports psychologist per se, right? He's more of a performance coach, mindset coach. But he's an advisor to some of the best and brightest athletes, teams, coaches in the world. And he was my brother's mindset coach. And I was like, man, Russell has access to Trev. And this is the same stuff that I could use as a salesperson, right? That I could use in business, that I could use as I build teams, and certainly the people around me, my team members could leverage, because in business, like in sports, there's a lot of pressure. There's pressure to perform. There's pressure to perform whether in an adverse environment, or even one where you're winning, right? In fact, the wins create more pressure. And so it's like, how do we handle pressure? How do we handle mindset? And we just thought that, gosh, these organizations are really invest in us and our skill set, but most of the time they're not investing in our mindset. And that oftentimes is the difference in how we perform, and particularly over time, right? Those that are winning year in and year out, at least in the communities that I was in, the sales communities I was in, were the people that had the right mindset, that had a higher level of adversity tolerance than their peers, a higher level of adversity tolerance. And that's what we were trying to establish. So we created this organization, and ultimately at the beginning, it really was a consulting company. But as we delivered product and found ways to make it scalable and sustainable, we became a technology company, because that was the best way for us to to provide our product to our clients. And so we've been a B2B type of organization, in some of the best and brightest organizations in the world: Johnson & Johnson, Workday, Salesforce, Amazon, Microsoft, et cetera. But in 2022, we're really excited about what's coming next. And we're going to consumer, and so hopefully, listeners will have access to a toolkit for mindset, and as we move forward. So we're excited. There's a lot happening, and but ultimately we're just here to help people realize their potential, right, and live limitless. So that's us.
Realize the potential and live limitless. I love that.
That's right.
Let's,
Yeah.
for our listeners right now, you need to grab your pen and your notebook right now. There's going to be so much here. I was looking at your website. I love your mission.
Mhm.
Your mission is to enrich culture, optimize performance, a mindset without limits. So cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cool. Love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to get into all of that. And you mentioned now, is that Russell? Is he your younger brother or your older brother?
Yeah. Yeah. He's about 5.5 years younger than me.
His little brother.
Yeah. So everything he's learned, Bruce, is like, basically I paved the way, but I'm the, so I got Russell's my younger brother. I also have a younger sister. Her name's Anna, and she plays basketball at Stanford. And she's actually going into her 6th year because she had an injury and then she had COVID. So she's leveraging all this opportunity to continue to be an athlete. But she's the real star. She won a national championship last year for Stanford, obviously at a great school and getting great education and a great athletic program. But so I'm like the Cooper Manning of the Wilson family. I'm the other brother that doesn't get enough credit. You know what I mean? Nobody knows who that is out there. Probably funnier. Significant, still, his own level of talent, right? That's Cooper Manning. So I'm the Cooper Manning of the Wilsons, and so though many people don't know I'm out here, but I'm doing my best to leave my own footprint.
I know everybody can relate to that analogy.
Yeah,
because the Mannings, man, they are they're out there for sure. Hey, let me ask you this before we get into my I want real quick. I want you to dive a little bit deeper. I would love to hear. You mentioned that Chicago is kind of your part of your home as well, but like, where did you grow up, and how in the world did you get into like sales, and now here you are leading your organization?
Yeah, so I'm from Richmond, Virginia.
Okay,
is where I would say I'm from. But I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. My dad was an attorney at Procter and Gamble.
Okay,
and my brother and I were both born there, but I moved from there in the middle of 1st grade, so I was like 6 or 7 years old. We moved to Virginia. And my dad moved us down there. He had an opportunity at a firm down there in Virginia. But so I grew up in Richmond, and the west end of Richmond. Went to a school called Collegiate School, which was like a private school in that area in the west end of Richmond. And then certainly was an athlete. Played multiple sports. Ended up going to college at University of Richmond and played football and baseball there. And like many athletes, when it's all said and done, and you're no longer serviceable to play at the next level, you're looking for your next career, and a lot of us get into sales, right? Because it's it's competitive. It's much like the arena that you played in, and given your sport or the environment that you were in for the last however many years. So sales was a good place for me to go. And I actually started working. My first job was Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So I was one of those guys selling you up into a fancier car, Bruce, and then making sure you got that protection on the vehicle, that collision damage waiver, and the all that stuff. So that was me. But it was a tremendous experience. Really a crash course kind of MBA for me, right, if you will. But I ended up leaving there and getting into pharmaceuticals, medical device sales. First pharmaceuticals at a startup pharma company, and then when they got bought, I went over to a medical device company called Stryker, which many might find familiar. Stryker is a fantastic organization, super competitive in the space, great culture, and learned a lot there, and then moved back into pharma in a leadership role at a company that's based out of Chicago area. And just, had a tremendous time there, great leadership there, and they're still growing today, but had an opportunity to make an impact there. And then they would be our first customer. They'd be our first client. When we started this business, they were our very first client. And so I'm really thankful to the folks at Horizon Therapeutics for the opportunity, because they kind of saw what we thought this product could be, and they were willing to give us a chance to build it while I was still there, really, for a few months, and then ride off into the sunset with some traction, right? So they're still a client today. So that's kind of the story, for sure.
I absolutely love that. But you said something at the very end, and here we are. We're in the month of November. We're taping this, and this is going to actually play, I believe, the last of November or first of December. But you
Mhm.
said you are thankful. You said
Yeah.
you're thankful for that opportunity. And one thing that I find that great leaders, they're grateful leaders. Isn't that true?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And that's part of our kind of ethos at Limitless Minds. We have a Slack channel on, our team has a Slack
Okay.
channel like
All
many
right.
do.
Yeah.
And one of our things, one of our kind of really requirements, and ultimately, obviously it's got flexibility to it, but we everybody once every day you put in the morning or whenever you get a chance what you're grateful for, right? So we have a little gratitude channel on our Slack, and so every single person on our team will put something they're grateful for, and then they'll kind of put like what they're up to today. You know what I mean? Kind of what some of the tasks are. But before we start talking about tasks and things we got to get done, we start with what we're grateful, and it's really cool because as a leader of an organization, it gives me some insight into what's important to the people on my team.
Mm,
Because usually what they're grateful for shows up, it kind of surfaces what's really important to them, right?
sure.
And then it just allows me to kind of get that little peek behind the curtain on just who our people are, right? And what drives them. But I think for the individual internally, yeah, I think gratitude is a really core a really core ingredient to mindset, right? Starting your day off with gratitude every
Mm,
day is a fantastic start to the day, right? That's like that workout, that's like that morning coffee, right? It's kind of daily hygiene, really, right? It's like brushing your teeth like every day,
mm,
maybe twice a day, right? Like
mm.
brushing your teeth. You should take a second to express gratitude. It's really important.
I
And
love.
one of the things I'm grateful for, outside of obviously that opportunity my old company provided, it's just health, man. I mean, it's
Mm,
2020, 2021, 2022. Like, you can't take health for granted, right?
mm.
And I mean, heck, even this year, I try to take my fitness to another level because I'd kind of letting life go by, and then realized that I gotten a little heavy and all these different things, and I just really dedicated myself and partnered with my wife to kind of dedicate ourselves to our fitness. And I mean, I've lost, I think, net like 55 pounds.
What? That's
Yeah, yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, and still going. And so we're just really focusing on that and trying to just
Yeah.
live longer,
Yeah.
live longer, live happier,
Yeah.
live a little more fit life.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. A couple things there. Number one is that what you said about now, by the way, uh, I saw Tom Hanks one time receive an award, and he was standing up there, and he was a lifetime achievement or something. And he said, there's
Mhm.
three things, and I didn't hear two of those things. But the one thing I do remember is he said this. He said, we all need to bring ideas to the movie set. And I heard workplace.
Mm,
We need to bring ideas every day. And I tell people all the time, when you're listening to podcasts and when you're reading books, you do these different things in your
mhm.
mind, you can find ideas. And the idea that I want everybody to write down right now is this idea about this Slack channel on gratitude. Because you're
Yeah,
talking about not you're talking about connecting at a whole different level with your people. It's a whole different level.
yeah,
Because you said that when people write down what they're grateful for, the things that are most important, they rise to the top, and you can just like you can go really deep and really build incredible trust, incredible relationships with your people. Isn't that true?
100%. And I think that one of I want to say I can't take credit for that idea. I think
Mm.
probably one of my co-founders, maybe DJ Eitzen, probably came up with it. Sounds like a hallmark or something he probably came up with, or
Yeah.
Amanda Larkin on our team. She was like
Yeah.
employee number one, and so what, and hopefully it was one of them. If it was somebody else on my team and you're listening, I apologize, but I think I think it's one of them. And so they got that started, and even
That's
today I still need to work on this because as you can imagine, not every sometimes it's a Tuesday and it's 9 p.m. You're like, man, I didn't put in there what I didn't send my team what I'm grateful for. Shoot, right? Or you go a day or two because you've been traveling or whatever it is. So there are times where you forget, and then you kind of realize, oh my gosh,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And also that your team's kind of expecting you uh
Mm.
to send something, right? So everybody's so because it's part of their day is also reading, the team, whatever else the team. So it's part of a routine that we try to create. And I can definitely say that my days are more productive and more efficient when I leverage a certain period of time to express gratitude. That's for sure. 100%.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
And you're right. The last few years have been incredibly challenging and difficult, and just finding different ways to impact mindset. You posted something on LinkedIn that impacted me personally, and you said this. You said, honestly, and this is, I mean, it wasn't a picture. There was just a one-liner. It says, honestly, I just want to impact people.
Yeah.
And when you posted that, like, what, do you remember like what you were feeling? Or
what's funny is that sometimes on social media, and LinkedIn is a social media platform.
yeah,
A lot of times you're like trying to post the right thing or the right image or whatever. I oftentimes find myself thinking, I haven't posted in a while. Let me post something. That particular day, that was literally what I was thinking, right? And I think, and honestly, I think that I was posting that because it was a tough day, right? It was a tough day, and this journey as a founder of a company, it's not easy, and leadership can be lonely, right? It can be a lonely place.
yeah,
And so I think that was what was on my heart that particular day, because it's real. Like, that's just, really, that's truly why I wanted to start this company with the folks I started this company with, is not for anything else than just really wanted to leave a legacy and impact people, and our window of opportunity to do that is so small. And so that's just really what I was thinking then. And that's what I think about nearly every day, when it comes down to it, is why are we doing this? And especially when when the chips are down, or it's a tough day, or you get a no, you're like, sometimes you think in your head, like, what am I doing? I can be doing something different, easier. But the reality is that the answer is, I just want to impact people. And I think that this is a fantastic way for us to impact not just thousands of people, but millions, billions, right? And so
yeah.
that's this journey, right?
I
That's
love
what this
that.
is for.
I love that. It's interesting that you say that, is because there's been many times I've noticed that when I've posted something on social, most of the time it's for me. It's for me because it reminds me like how I'm feeling. And when I post something on social, and I think, man, people are going to love this. There's nothing out there, man. It's like crickets. And
Yeah.
other times when I post something, I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I should even post that. And then I post it, and all of a sudden everybody's relating to it because it's coming from the heart and vulnerability, and people feeling the exact same way. And it's just like you. And that's why I think it's more important than ever to talk about and get you on the show today to talk about mindset. It's more important than ever. And I want to talk about that. Before we do, you mentioned you started talking about leadership, and I just want to ask you, if somebody, leadership is defined in so many different ways. And so, Harry, if somebody said, hey, what's leadership to you? How would you define that, or how would you respond to that?
Well, you're right. It can be defined in a lot of different ways. A lot of people have different kind of like priorities when it comes to describing, who their best leaders that they've either had or would or are looking for. For me, authenticity it always resonates with me, from a leadership perspective, because I think it's not, perfection's not a requirement of authenticity, right? But consistency is, it's not about being the coolest person in the room, the smartest person in the room, person that knows everything, the person that's always winning. It's just about being really consistent, being dependable, being some of these are like those little appendages to authenticity, I think, that are really qualities, like they're literally great qualities of leadership, right? And so but authenticity is something that I can always buy into, right? If I'm looking up at a leader or looking over at a leader, again, it's not about perfection. It's about buying in, right, to the cause, buying into the mission, buying into the direction we're going. And I can always follow a leader that is just true to themselves, right? And shows up consistently on a daily basis, regardless of, again, where the chips fall. That's really, really important to me. I love leaders that have a high level of courage in their conviction, willing to stand alone, right? And and, make that statement despite whether it's, whether it's going to be, you're going to gain fans or not, right? It's not, it's not always about making friends, if you will, right? So the ability to stand alone, I think, is important. That courage. So those are a couple of things. I mean, there, you could go down like a laundry list of other items. I mean, I think empathy is important for leaders. I think that's something in the last year plus 2 years, this kind of with the pandemic, that I think leaders, and this is again something that I heard from a conversation that DJ was having with a client about one of the things that organizations, teams, and leaders were struggling with the most over the last year plus is balancing empathy with a drive to results, right? Because as leaders, we're oftentimes, obviously trying to pull as much out of our people as we can to get to a number, a goal, or a quota, or whatever it might be. But more than ever, this need for a level of empathy for your people, knowing everything that's going on outside of the four walls of work, right? Homeschooling, back when pandemic was at its height, homeschooling, working from home, a spouse that may be in a position where they've been furloughed or fired, or let go, or certainly, now you might be working next to your spouse and that's never happened before. All the things that had changed in the new norm, and then bringing that to work. And a lot of times there wasn't a really delineation between work and home, right? All these different things, and then trying to hit numbers when maybe everything looks different, right? So if I'm a salesperson and I'm usually in the field making 12, 15 calls a day, calling on, whoever my client is, and now all that's virtual, and it's on Zoom or whatever it is, like,
right.
That's now I have to go about this whole different way. And so as a leader, like, being able to see my people, right? And I don't mean literally, right? I mean more figuratively, like being able to really see their challenges that they're dealing with, right? Because this was all also during a host of challenges and realities, socially, with everything going on with kind of things going on in the world. There was politics, right? Yep. There was the election, there was racial injustice, yep. All the different things that were happening in 2020 and 2021. And so the balancing empathy with a drive to results, I think, is important for leaders to do as well, right? So I mean, there's probably a top 10 of, like, things that I think are important for leaders, but those are the kind of the top 3: authenticity, courage, and conviction, and empathy, that I think are really important in today's leader. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there, and I'm taking so many notes here. This is so good. I will tell you that I've had on a number of guests. Many of them have been top level HR leaders, and they've been, woo. I remember before the pandemic hearing the word "a seat at the table." The HR has a seat at the table right now. They definitely do, and it's been a tough time. But one of the things you mentioned also, obviously with your sales background, and you mentioned a lot of no's, out there, just for example, some of the people that are in sales, they're no longer able, well, in many cases, they're not able to meet with the client. They're having to, they're getting to jump on Zoom or get on a call. Still a lot of no's. Like, how do you teach? Let's start with salespeople before we get into that. Or what are some tips that you would give salespeople to, like, deal with that, like, every day, trying to get there? Because it's heavy when you get a lot of no's in one day.
Yeah. Good. Right. It's like, the more no's, the better, because, another no, the law of averages plays out. Another no means you're closer to a yes, right? And that might sound cliche for people who are salespeople. They probably heard that before, right? But it's true, right? That's why cliches are cliches, because they're true.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is that, like, what comes with no's is a lot of pressure, right? Pressure to perform, because, like, because that, like, when you're not selling or you're not performing, it's hard to hide. It's just like being an athlete. Like, then there's a scoreboard. It's hard to hide from that result, right? So I get it, right? Like, pressure's real, and we all, and whether you're in sales or not, listening to this podcast, like, there's a lot in your given role, at work or at home. There's a lot of pressure, and we all have that in common. So, but I think the perspective around pressure is important. Billie Jean King once said, "Pressure is a privilege," and And what she meant by that, at least what I believe she meant by that, was that without, when there's not pressure, that typically means that you haven't been placed in a position where people believe in you, right? So when you're in a pressure situation, whether you're a starting quarterback in the NFL, or you're a salesperson at company X, Y, or Z, or you lead a household, right? You have this privilege to be in this role where everybody's looking to you and believes that you can get it done, right? Somebody's put you on the field, right? Not because they believe that you're ready, right? Somebody's given you a job to do, at a goal or quota to hit, because they believe that you can attain it, right? And so that's great, right? I mean, I love opportunities where there's pressure, because that just simply means that somebody has put me in a position to perform because they already have belief that I can do it, right? And so now it's just about putting those behaviors in place, right? And there's usually behaviors that you've been trained on, or you've done before, that you've seen work, a set of a formula, or a set of behaviors that that you can do, right? So what are those one or two things that that you can do that are going to drive results? It's not always about results, it's about action, right? What are the one or two or three things that I can do, right, that have been maybe a proven formula, right, or that somebody else has done in the past, or something that I've done to make it happen in a previous previous opportunity? What exists that I know I can hang my hat on, right? How can I prepare for the moment that's coming, that allows me to do it in my sleep, right? And so like these types of things are the way to think about it. So I think really working on your perspective around pressure moments, right? And that's a conditioning. That's not going to just happen overnight. That takes conditioning. That takes putting one step in front of the other and kind of building blocks, right? Just putting yourself in and like looking for pressure moments, like looking for these moments that are going to be tough, that you might just fail. That's okay, right? Because usually these things are you bounce back from, right? And the sun comes up the next day, hopefully, right? And so pressure is a privilege, right? Pressure's a privilege. And so I think as salespeople, or anybody in roles that you feel like there's pressure moments, great, right? Because it's a privilege.
I love that, because you said that, and this is what I got out of that. And you said it's not always results, it's about action, right? It's about building momentum. It reminds me of you ever heard of or read anything from John Maxwell? So he's incredible, but he talks about the Big Mo in his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And the Big Mo basically says, when you have momentum, you feel like you're better than you are. When you don't have momentum, you feel like you're worse. So the key is trying to drive momentum, and you do that through action. And,
my dad used to always say, there's no better mentum than momentum.
Whoa.
I don't know what that means. I mean, I would never know what he meant back then, but it was just, that was like a, something my dad used to say. But it's funny, like when we talk about results, and like Trevor Moawad, our late co-founder, wrote a book called It Takes What It Takes. I got it right behind me here. Actually. So those who haven't had it, you should check it out. It Takes What It Takes.
I will put that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah. But he talks about, neutral thinking, right? And really neutral isn't about, a lack of action. It's actually quite opposite. It's about it's really about non-negativity, right? And being careful about positivity. In other words, positivity is great, right? We all believe in being positive, of course. It's really important. John Gordon talks about positivity a lot. It's great, right? But positivity is hard, right? That's like an AP course in like mindset. That's 301 401 Spanish, right? It's like a language that that's an advanced course, right? Neutral thinking is somewhere in between positive and negative, right? But both positive and negative are results driven, outcomes driven, right? But what we know, there's not a lot of data that supports the positivity works, right? But there's a ton of data that supports the negative thinking works. The problem is that it works negatively, right? And so what Trevor Moawad used to do, and would work with my brother on, for example, is just working towards eliminating negativity. It wasn't about trying to be positive when things are tough, right? It's about eliminating negativity, especially the verbalization of that negativity. That verbalization of negativity is what really weaponizes negativity against you. And so the ability to reframe negative towards neutral, which is about behaviors, right?
Mm.
So let's say something negative happens, right? An incident happens. It's not about ignoring the negative. It's about recognizing it and then being able to diagnose the one or two reasons why it happened, right? And then from there, being able to diagnose one or two solutions, right? One or two solutions, actions that you can take, and then putting those actions into place,
Mm.
right? And so then it's about just actions and behaviors, not so much about the result. It's about actions and behaviors, and then you have the license to go positive, right?
Yeah.
Like once you take action, right? And so like that area of neutral is really productive place, right? It's a really productive place to be because it's all about behavior. It's all about truth, facts, and behaviors. And so check that book out though, because he'll walk through a little bit about neutral and how some of the best and brightest have leveraged that, from Nick Saban at Alabama and building that team, and Russ and others. So yeah.
So interesting. My son-in-law Chase actually recommended that book to me, and I have that
nice.
on Audible, and I just recently listened to it. I'll definitely put it in the show notes. And I was going to send him a note that says, I love everything about it. And by the way, neutral thinking is fascinating. The only part I didn't really like about it was the part where he talked about Georgia coming back and beating Oklahoma, because I'm a big time Oklahoma fan, and that still stings.
Yeah, man.
I was at that game at the Rose Bowl when Stephen Parker scooped and scored and thought we had the game won, and they come back and won in double overtime. It's still, man.
It's happening in sports. That's sports, man.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But I hear even I heard Troy Aikman talk about this on the broadcast just yesterday, limiting negative plays. We're talking about football here. And I love what you're saying. Let me ask you this: big HR community on this podcast. For those in HR, and they're dealing with a lot of stuff right now, right? They're trying to get people to come to work. For one thing, there's a war on talent. There's just a lot of challenges. What are maybe some things that you might share with the community on some things that they might think about or that they could work on in their personal leadership that might help resonate to the organization? Any thoughts around that on the corporate side?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, there is a war on talent, right? Yeah. And we've been noticing that and talking about it a lot at our organization. It seems like companies are now competing with each other on who can have the most robust solutions in the area of health and wellness, right? From mental health to providing benefits around fitness, both mental and physical fitness, and in and around all of that stuff, right? Companies are really competing because now, with everything, with the Great Resignation and certainly every year that goes on, the employees are getting younger, right? So now companies are being led by millennials, right? In many ways, right? There's leadership, a lot of leadership now at companies, especially like mid-level and senior leadership, are millennials, right?
Right.
And Gen Zs are being hired and brought onto organizations to be impact players. So and these are that's two demographics that are not just looking for it, they're requiring an organization, they're challenging an organization to have solutions in this area of mental health and wellness and mental fitness and peak performance. Like it's required, right? Because that's what your people are looking for. So I think that and to answer your question around, well, what can like an HR leader do individually that can spark something in their organization is, well, do the research, right? Like find organizations that are out there that provide solutions. There's Limitless Minds is one of them, but there's a lot of different solutions out there, right? That can complement each other. It doesn't mean if you pick Limitless Minds, you can't do Headspace or like, you can do both of those things across your organization, because I think that over the next 3 to 5 years, if not already, insurance, I think insurance companies are going to start covering these types of solutions, right? I think I've already seen that United Healthcare, and I hopefully I'm accurate in saying this, I think they're covering Peloton, like their Peloton subscriptions, right? And so, but I think that, so doing the research, right, on all the different options for health and wellness. I think as an individual, leveraging these platforms for yourself, right, whatever it might exist, leveraging these for yourself, starting somewhere, maybe even piloting a program with like a leadership team or kind of some peers at your organization, identifying 25, 50 people at your organization if it's big enough, to pilot something that's meaningful. But I think that just doing something, right? And now because when I was coming up, skill set was largely the majority of the investment that companies were putting into me as a person, which was great, right? I got better at what I was doing,
Yeah.
but nobody was spending any time, money, investment, energy on mindset, right? On wellness, on mental health, right? And that's critical. In fact, I don't know that if you don't have like a strategy for your mind, then that nice strategy you have for your business, right? It's less impactful, because that strategy you have for your business is going to have bumps in the roads, and the bumps in the road, like, you were planning to go A to Z, but then of course there's all these obstacles that exist throughout the year. And so without that mindset, it's going to be tough for you people to reach that goal, right? So you got to have a mindset. You got to have a plan for your mindset. You got to have it. And most companies don't have, and most people at these organizations don't have the tools to flex, to like really flex that muscle, right? That mindset muscle. Most companies aren't doing anything for it, right? And so that's what a company like ours is doing, is providing a toolkit to help individuals and companies and the groups in aggregate across your organization have a game plan for adversity tolerance, a set of tools that can help them inside and outside of work, around the whole person, right? And then make sure it's sustainable, scalable, and something that people can have access to in an affordable way. And so yeah, that's what I think HR leaders, and I'm already seeing them do it, right? And that's fantastic. So I think that getting on board with really, where's the investment going to be in this space is important.
So, and I love that, because it's not just about talking about it. It's about providing those tools to help them. Hey, I'm just curious. You just mentioned that you've seen some others that have been successful. Like, what's a sign that says, hey, you're being successful with this? Like, what is, like, if someone says, hey, we want to try to put together a successful program, like, what does success actually look like? Or what are some signs or some things you hear that you're like, hey, that's working?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we do is we actually will create a baseline for organizations. Because I mean, it's because without something that's quantifiable, then you're just kind of hoping, right? And wondering, because you don't really know where you started, right? So you might think there's success, and certainly you can grab some qualitative feedback from your people, right? Hey, how you feeling? What's changed, right? So there's value in that as well. But I think it's really important for people to be able to measure, right? That, again, another that cliche of you can't, it's hard to manage what you can't measure, right? That's true. And so we actually measure when we really get in there with an organization, we really measure before we do much of anything, right? We'll measure, see where you're at, and there's a mindset assessment that we leverage that measures 13 non-cognitive skills. It's measuring things like grit, resilience, adaptability. It's measuring internal locus of control, self-efficacy, self-determination, et cetera, 6 or 7 other items. And we can create a baseline today, and then allow people to have access to our platform, our digital platform. There's content like podcasts, micro videos, gamification, quizzing, all these different things, and then remeasure 6 months later, 12 months later. And so we can actually show you. We don't have to just guess, right? We can actually show you what the growth from baseline to now. We can show you the growth, who's been impacted the most, who engaged the most, and what does that engagement look like? And then how does that engagement impact that mindset shift? And then have that mindset shift impact other things like performance, right? So if it is a sales organization, it's like, hey, this is where the team was at, all the way down from the individual across the org. Here's where the team was at. We did X, Y, and Z, right? These are the people that engaged in X, Y, and Z. And holy smokes, like, look how it actually impacted their performance, right? And then we can also ask them, hey, what happened? What changed? How you feel, right? How does this impact if you're staying at the organization or not, right? We've been able to actually impact organizations, and this is one area that we've been able to show, like, we've been able to impact the retention, right? We have an organization that before we started working with them, their average turnover rate was 29% in this particular division, about 300 folks, right? And the year they worked with us, it decreased to 19%.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Now, anecdotally, they also said that they were helping, that 19% also represented keeping some of their best people as well, right? So you want to keep people, you also want to keep some of your best performers, right? If you're going to keep people, you might as well, you want to keep some of your best performers. So, there's some folks that just by nature, the bottom 20% of your performers, I mean, oftentimes, it's not a bad thing when they find excellence elsewhere, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And
Right.
that's just part of kind of the circle of life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you really want to keep your top performers. You want to take that that middle
Yeah.
60% of your organization and try to elevate them, right? And that's what programs like this do, right? So those are other markers of success is that middle 60%, that mighty middle at organizations. Are they moving, right? And just incrementally, right? Are they moving at 2 or 3%? Are they moving 1%? Are they moving 5%? If you get that big old group of 60% to move just incrementally, that's huge growth for your organization, right? And if you get, and more importantly, if you can keep them at the organization, that also saves us money, right? And impacts bottom line. So these are things that are markers, but more, really specifically though, we will measure where the mindset is today. We'll implement our program, and then we'll remeasure so people can actually see brass tacks on how people are changing and how that change is impacting performance. So
I love that. I love that because it's quantifiable. And I think that's the challenge with a lot of different programs is that leaders aren't able to see, like, what is the ROI? Everybody, we all want to return on our investment, but we also want to take care of our people. And to be able to show numbers like that, I love that. Hey, I want to ask you about this question because, this is kind of to seal this up here. You made a comment at the ERC Global Workforce Symposium that really, I wrote that down and I was like, man, this is like, it gave me chills. And you said this, you said, you don't have to be sick to get better.
Yeah.
And it still gives me chills to even say that. And I want to also tag on to this last question I have in this particular area.
Mm-hmm.
And that is around people that are listening today. There's people that are struggling, just people, right? They could be in any profession. They're struggling. And I would and we talked about momentum. And I would love for you to just share for the audience, like, number one, for those that are struggling, what's some things they can do? And by the way, if you're not struggling, it might help them too, right?
Yeah. Well, and what I meant by you don't have to be sick to get better, right, is a lot of people look for that self-help book, right? Or that, that workout, even if, in the fitness world, like you join a gym in January, right? Because it's, the new year and you told yourself you're going to lose weight or whatever. And you're like me and you get on a scale in February and you realize, oh my gosh, I haven't been on a scale in 2 years and this is the outcome. Like I'm way heavier than I needed to. Like, so we start doing something, right? We start doing something when there's a kind of an insult to the business or there's a competitor in the marketplace. All of a sudden we work on our messaging differently, right? Or whatever it is, right? It's usually some sort of negative situation that wakes us up, right? And a lot of the companies, teams, and even individuals that we work with are high performers. Right, they're people or teams or individuals that are doing great things, right? That in fact, they're probably looking towards us because they're already motivated in some sort of way, right? They've already seen or tasted some level of success, right? And so when we go to work with like a Johnson and Johnson or Workday or a Salesforce, like these are companies that are behemoths in their space. They're having a ton of success, even with the pandemic. Some of these organizations we're seeing some of the greatest success they've had, right? But that's actually part of the problem, right? Success brings new challenges, new pressure, new competition, right? The need to reinvent yourself over and over again because the needle keeps moving, right? The benchmark now is higher, right? And the pressure is greater, right? Or moving from an individual contributor role and all that success you had, now you're promoted. The pressure doesn't decrease because now you've gotten promoted finally, right? So that's what, so you don't have to be sick to get better means that, hey, like, regardless of where you're at, there's a higher ceiling, right? Your potential has now moved, right? And so that potential is a moving target, right? And so don't wait until you're sick. Don't wait until you're hurting. Don't wait until you're injured. Don't wait until there's a challenge or a problem. Like, condition yourself now, right? Condition yourself now. So when there is a challenge, you're prepared, you're ready, right? Don't, you know what I mean? Right. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Right. And so that's really, I think that's really critical. Now, there are people out here that are struggling though.
Yeah.
Right. There are people that are sick, literally and figuratively, and everywhere in between. And so that's something that is a real challenge from a mental health perspective, from a well-being perspective. There's so many things that make life tough, right? And but like, here's the thing: you can't go out. It's hard to go at life alone. You know, it's hard to go at life alone. And we're raising some capital right now, right? And I've been talking to investors. If I was having a beer with you, right, or an investor, like really what we're trying to create digitally, and this as we move into 2022, because we're building this, we're about to launch an app that's going to allow us to go to the consumer, going to allow us to work with our B2B clients even more efficiently and in a way that's more engaging. We're really trying to create like a caddy for your mind, right? I don't know if you play any golf.
I
or
do.
If you ever play with if you ever played with a caddy before.
I've never played with a caddy, but it looks cool.
Yeah. So when you get to play with a caddy, and again, you don't have to be a golfer to get this analogy, I don't think. But like when you play with a caddy, you realize that it's a nice competitive advantage, right? Because you have somebody that's got your back, that's helping you with your shot selection. So that same par 4 that has like this a dog leg left, where you're like, okay, I'm going to take out my driver, right?
Yeah, right.
And when you know damn well, Bruce, you need to take out like a 5-iron and lay up, right? You know what I mean? Or because that bunker is right at 180 yards, or whatever it is, right? And or that putt that you're thinking is left to right, right? The caddy's behind you say, hey, listen, Bruce, that's a right to left putt, just a cup outside, right? And you're like, damn, okay, I didn't read it that way, right? And you're like, look at it again, you're like, I guess you're right, right? And so, but your caddy's there to help you with your shot selection, right? Help you pull out the right club out of your bag, right? To confirm what you might be thinking on the course, right? Same thing in life, right? Like it's hard. Life's hard to go out alone, right? Sometimes you don't see that the wind is right to left or left to right or whatever it might be in life, right? You know what I mean? Like figuratively, life's hard to do on your own, and so we feel like we can provide with our technology a digital mindset caddy for you, somebody, an entity, right, that can help you with your daily shot selection, right? The goal is the goal is you're reaching for, how you talk to yourself, right? How your language impacts performance and giving you data to support where your next move, right? Helping you identify the times in your calendar that are going to require you to do some guided visualization, right? Giving you access to practice, right? Giving you the ability to practice how you your mindset on a daily basis, things like that. And so life's hard to go out alone. You need an accountability partner, at least one. Hopefully you have multiple, right? And these aren't just friends. I'm not talking about friends. If they're friendly, great, right? But I'm not talking about friends. I'm talking about people that are willing to hold you accountable, right? To be that speedometer read for you, right? When you're driving down that street that is 25 miles per hour, right? And you see that sign that says you're going 38 or 42, you're like, oh, shoot, what do? You slow down, right? We need those people in our lives that can do the same thing, right? Allow you to kind of understand your goals and where you're trying to go. Help you get there by calling you out on stuff, right? And vice versa. And so these are things that, like, when we're struggling with things, right? Do you have somebody or an entity that you can leverage that are going to be your caddy, right? That are going to help you with your daily shot selection, right? Figuratively speaking. Is there somebody there that knows the course just as well or better than you do, right? You know what I mean, right? And can help you navigate life's inevitable challenges, right? Adversity is not a win, like a if thing, it's a win. Like, when is it going to happen? And it's not about how big or small. There's micro adversities, there's macro adversities, there's things that happen that are small, little bite-sized chunks of adversity, right? Going through those daily bite-sized chunks of adversity are hard to do by yourself, right? Loneliness itself is an epidemic, right? And so loneliness kills a lot of people, right? And you know what I mean? Like loneliness slows you down, right? So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to talk out loud about your mental health. Don't be afraid to talk about your well-being, right? That's my suggestion for people that are struggling or just trying to figure out their next move or working through how the pandemic's impacted their life and the next job they're looking for, promotion, whatever it is, right? Is you don't have to go at it alone.
Man, I love that. And I appreciate you sharing that so much. Because I know it's going to help somebody out there. You are definitely impacting people. I want to ask, and by the way, I was at the Sherm National Conference in Vegas just a month ago. Michael Phelps was there talking about mental health. And he said something that it just hit me. And he said, the more we talk about it, the easier it will get. And you
Yeah.
said, don't be afraid to talk about it. And I want to just reiterate what Michael Phelps said too. He's like, man, you keep talking about it, it will get easier. It's never easy, but it can get
Right.
easier to talk about. Hey, let me ask you this. I wrote a book about 5 years ago called Find Your Lane, and it's all about like finding your calling, your purpose. And obviously you have found, man, you found your lane. You touch people in so many ways. When did you like know like you're doing what you want to do, or was there a moment, or were there little moments?
There was initially a moment that I figured out what I like knew that I was doing what I wanted to do, but
Mm-hmm.
there was definitely a moment where I realized that I had to do more, if that makes any sense.
Mm.
So my dad passed away at 55 years old,
Mm.
right? So this was
Wow.
2010.
Wow.
And he passed away way too young, of course, but with a lot left on the table that he hadn't accomplished yet.
Yeah.
And he had accomplished a lot. So my dad was African American, right?
Yeah.
He was born in Jackson, Mississippi in the
Okay.
50s.
Oh.
So in the South, right, in the 50s.
Yeah.
Had a father and a mother who luckily were educated and provided some opportunities. Him and his four brothers. My grandfather sent his oldest, Ben Wilson, who's just retiring, by the way. Congrats, Uncle Ben. But he sent him up to a boarding school up in Massachusetts called Wilbraham and Munson. And luckily, my Uncle Ben was really smart and exceptional and excelled there, which I think was an opportunity for then the next brothers to come along. So they all went to Wilbraham, right? So my
Okay.
dad was the second oldest.
Okay.
Well, he did really well there. He'd go on to Dartmouth College with his older brother Ben, and all the other all four brothers would go to Dartmouth, right? So this is in the 70s, right?
Okay.
And do really well. He was an all Ivy League football player there. Played football and baseball. My dad did. Then went to UVA Law School in 78, I think, 78 to 81, something like that. And did really well there. But then after he was done, he decided he'd go try out for the San Diego Chargers, which he did. And then when he was cut, ultimately he went and he had a job waiting for him at Procter and Gamble. I mentioned being from Cincinnati,
Yeah.
so he had a
Right.
job waiting for him in Procter and Gamble in the early 80s, and I was born there in 83. But so far so good, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so far so good. So then he matriculated us to Virginia, ended up having a good career in law, et cetera, et cetera. Then he gets sick, right? He's now had 3 kiddos, myself, Russell, Anna, and he finds himself about 6 months before my wedding. He had all these complications due to diabetes. He'd
Okay.
had his leg amputated below the knee. He had some kidney stuff. He had some sight stuff. He had neuropathy in the feet and all these different things. And he had some strokes. And so this is early 2010, late 2009. And I'm driving him around Richmond, Virginia, and he couldn't say much because the strokes had kind of, messed with his, his speech delivery and all that stuff. And
Right.
and it's clear as day, he turns to me and says, "I just wish I had been a success." He said, "I just wish I had been a success." And this is after all these different things. That's why I rattled off all those successes, right? Because
I'm glad
just
you
to paint
said
a
that.
picture, for you on how successful this individual had been. But what I realized at that moment is that my dad knew that he wasn't going to be around much longer. And he also knew that he was leaving so much behind unaccomplished, right? Undone, right? And a legacy in his eyes, unfulfilled, right? And so as I thought about that seemed like every day from then on out for a few years, and then at some point I realized, man, I was 35 years old when I started this company, and I was leaving the wonderful company I was at, and I was like, man, if I had 20 years left, what would I do with it, right? What kind of legacy am I going to leave behind? I have 3 daughters that are 9, 6, and 4. What am I doing over the next 10, 20, 30 years? If I'm blessed to have that long, what am I going to do with it? What kind of legacy am I going to leave behind? And what kind of risks do I want to demonstrate for my daughters that I want them to be able to take when it's their time to take risks, right? Because I think they're only going to take the risks that they see their parents take and at least in the environment, the ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
around them. So how am I going to be a part of that? How am I going to be a part of leaving that legacy and that yellow brick road for them?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's really how I realized that I wanted to impact people in a way that I could leverage strengths that I had and do something at scale that could impact people and leverage a platform that that I had that exists and grow that platform. So here we are today, right? So so that's kind of, it's a moment of that's kind of a moment that was not just one moment in time, but kind of that moment of my dad passing, my dad getting sick, and that statement he said to me, and riding shotgun in my car in Richmond, Virginia, that impacted me even today. Right. So.
And that story you just shared is going to impact a lot of people that are listening to this show right now that may be thinking the same thing. Maybe they're wondering how they're going to be a success when they've been a success, or maybe double down or triple down on whatever they're doing, or do more. And so, man, I appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, man, the time just flew by, Harry, and I knew it would. I always like to ask my guests as we kind of wind down the show. I want to ask you one last question. And that because this is perfect timing for this question, and that is Harry, 10 years older. He's knocking at your front door, and you're going to go answer that front door. What's he going to tell you?
Well, it's probably going to tell me that time has flown by, right? Because that's what I'm saying. Like, this window of opportunity is so short, to make the impacts you want to make. Because there's certain kind of chapters in your life that like the impact opportunity is greater. For me, I feel like it's right now, right? Because in 10 years, I'm going to have a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 14-year-old. Well, so one will be in college somewhere, one will be newly driving, right? And another will just be a pain in my ass, right? and so like, that alone, just, those times you get with your children, right, are fleeting, and they're already going by quickly, right? So I think, time has flown by. This business will have flourished, right? I'll probably have reinvented myself in some minor ways along the way, right? Same with my wife. So, I mean, time's going to fly. And so that person's going to knock on the door and be like, hey man, I told you time was going to fly. It's been 10 years, man. Here you are. Right. And so, that's kind of what reminds me to like act now, right? Like, it's now is the time, and live in the moment, right? Just focus on what's happening right now, and squeeze every bit of juice out of that orange. You know what I mean? Because I have a feeling when future Harry comes, it's going to be like, man, time flew, right? So, yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. And you're right. You'll blink. I've got 3 kids. They're all out of college. It just like blink. I just blinked and they just grew up. So, so cool, man. I've enjoyed our time so much together today. You are definitely driving in the leadership lane. For those that are listening that want to connect with you, or they want to learn more about something you shared today, what would be the best way for them to connect?
Well, I mean, I'm on all the social media platforms. I'm on Twitter. I'm at HB Productions 83. Same on Instagram at HB Productions 83. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So just find me on my name, Harry Wilson. Actually, I think it might say Harry D. Wilson the fourth, just in case you see that. And then Limitless Minds is thinkbig-gofar.com. Thinkbig-gofar.com. Think Big Go Far is kind of our Nike, our just do it, right? It's our tagline. But thinkbig-gofar.com, and reach out to us there. If you're an HR leader that's looking to bring in a solution around health and wellness and mindset, and feel like you can impact individuals at your organization at this level, reach out to us. We can share more about how we, kind of our offering, how we do it. And we'd love to come into your organization and make an impact and partner with you to do that. And then I'm also the host of a podcast called Room Tilters. Room Tilters has kind of been on a little bit hiatus, but for those who haven't kind of tuned in to Room Tilters, you got about a couple seasons of content to check out. So you can do that, but it's been a hiatus for some other projects to be announced later and different things. But just, reach out.
I'm grateful that I got a chance to meet you in Chicago. I feel like, when we meet different people, there's a reason for that. And so I cannot wait to share the perspective and the wisdom you shared today with this community, and to see what's ahead for Limitless Minds ahead. So thank you again for coming on the show and sharing today, my friend.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. We'll have to have you on our podcast in coming, in the near future. And for your listeners, don't forget, you don't have to be sick to get better.
Love it, man. I cannot wait to share this. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, but